Hey guys, tonight we're doing something uncomfortable. You're about to live out one single day as a medieval peasant. That's right, mud, hunger, lice and all. No swords, no castles, no Game of Thrones drama. Just cold floors, aching backs and turnips. Lots and lots of turnips. You open your eyes before the sun. Not because you're well rested, but because there's a chicken standing on your chest. Literally, you live in a one-room hut with 7 other people, 3 goats and 24 fleas who consider your left calf prime real estate. The smell? A fine mix of damp straw, old smoke, and something suspiciously like fermented cabbage. That's the perfume of poverty, baby. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I've got a whole lineup of these alternate reality bedtime adventures waiting for you. And hey, drop a comment below with your location and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sleeping on what might optimistically be called a bed, a wooden frame filled with straw, covered by a coarse linen sheet that hasn't seen fresh air in weeks. Your pillow is a sack of wool. It smells like sheep, because it is sheep. And no, there is no mattress. Your spine is on a first-name basis with every board underneath you. The house is dark. There are no windows, just a tiny hole in the wall that barely lets in light and definitely lets in cold. You're already shivering. It's late autumn, and the fire from last night died out hours ago. No one bothered to relight it yet because wood is expensive. Besides, you're a peasant. You don't get central heating. You get frostbite. The chickens are squawking, your little brother is snoring like a demon with asthma, and someone stepped on your foot in the night. Possibly your uncle, possibly the goat. You'll never know. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly woke before dawn out of necessity, or because their living conditions were too miserable for proper sleep. But for you, it's the fleas. They're the alarm clock. And they're hungry. You sit up, scratching at your neck, which is red and blotchy. There's a flea hopping around on your sleeve. You flick it off, missing completely. It disappears into the hay. It'll be back. Beside you, your sister mumbles something in her sleep about boiled barley. Must be dreaming of the feast you're not having today. You stand slowly. Your knees crack like dried twigs. There's no stretching routine in this life. You're 30, but feel 70. Because in medieval times, that's basically retirement age. Now comes the dance of getting dressed, which is to say, you put on the same woolen tunic you wore yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. It's itchy, it smells faintly of sheep and onions, and it doesn't fit right. You don't own shoes. You've got leather wrappings tied around your feet, stiff with last week's rain. On the wall hangs a wooden cross. Religion isn't just a Sunday thing here. It's your entire worldview. Every day starts with a whispered prayer. You kneel briefly, muttering thanks for surviving the night, for your family's health, and for not being dead from dysentery yet. That's considered a win. Mainstream historians agree that faith was the bedrock of medieval peasant life, not just for hope, but for survival. Your entire day is shaped by the church bell, your holidays by the saint's calendar, and your destiny by divine will. Good thing you've got prayers, because you don't have breakfast. As you step outside into the icy morning, your breath visible in the air, you hear the distant clanging of the village blacksmith. A rooster crows. Another day begins. The mud squishes underfoot. Your village path is a swampy mess, thanks to last night's rain and a total lack of drainage. A pig trots past you like it owns the place. It probably does. And just like that, your morning routine is done. You're awake, you're cold, and you're probably already late. You shuffle toward the fields, feet squelching in the mud, your breath puffing in little clouds that fade into the gray morning. The village is stirring now. Thin smoke rises from a few thatched rooftops. A woman empties a chamber pot into the ditch. You step carefully, because yes, that's exactly what it is. You're not headed to an office. You're not even headed to a stable job. You're going to spend the next 12 hours bent over a patch of cold, damp earth, doing what peasants have done for centuries, coaxing food from a ground that hates you. This isn't farming. This is war with dirt. And you're losing. The tools are waiting where you left them yesterday, rusty, splintered and heavy. Your plow is a wooden stick with an iron tip. Your oxen, you wish. You've got your hands, a hunched back, and the kind of endurance that only comes from surviving 30 consecutive harvests on porridge and prayers. You begin the day's work hoeing turnip rows, not planting, not harvesting, just hoeing. The turnips are months away, assuming the soil doesn't freeze, the crows don't get them, or your neighbor doesn't steal them. It's all very uncertain. The wind bites your face. You wipe your nose on your sleeve. That's what sleeves are for. Your hands are raw. Blisters open and close like tiny mouths. You wonder what it must be like to own gloves. Probably amazing. One of the kids from the next hut over is crying. He's maybe 5. He's also working the fields. There's no school for you or for him. You learn from mud, cold, and the occasional backhand. That's education in the medieval peasant world. Mainstream historians point out that child labor wasn't seen as cruel, just necessary. If you were old enough to walk, you were old enough to work. You didn't lose your childhood. You never had one. Suddenly, you feel a sharp sting on your ankle. You look down. Nettles? Again. You mutter a curse under your breath, earning a scolding look from the village priest who's conveniently walking by. His robes are clean. His hands are soft. You're not bitter. Okay, you're totally bitter. You stand for a moment to stretch your back. Bad idea. The overseer, a red-faced man with a voice like gravel in a sack, spots you. "Get back to it," he bellows. You do, because what's the alternative getting docked a day's worth of barley? Barley you can't afford to lose. Fringe historians still argue whether peasants were truly as oppressed as later romanticized versions suggest, but from where you're standing, ankle deep in mud, spine curled like a question mark, it sure feels like oppression. By midday, your stomach sounds like an angry goat. You sit down for lunch. Lunch is a generous word. It's a hunk of coarse black bread, a wedge of sour cheese, and a few boiled beans in a wooden bowl. No fork, just fingers. The cheese smells like someone's regrets. You eat anyway. The village dog watches you closely. You toss him a bean. He looks deeply insulted. A few women pass by on their way to fetch water. They carry wooden buckets on their heads like they were born with handles. One of them winks at you, or maybe she blinked. Hard to tell through all the smoke and soot. You nod, trying to look cool. You fail. You've got turnip bits in your beard and mud on your chin. Medieval flirting is tragic. You return to the field. Your muscles ache. Your arms tremble. But the sun isn't even close to setting, so you keep going. Dig, hoe, lift, curse, repeat. Historians still argue whether peasant work schedules were sun-up to sundown year-round, or seasonal with frequent holy days. You don't feel like you've had a day off in years. Maybe that's Saint's Day last spring, but you spent it fixing the thatch roof, so no. The wind shifts, bringing the smell of something burning. A thatched roof somewhere is on fire. People are shouting. You don't even flinch. Fires happen. Sometimes lightning, sometimes cooking accidents, sometimes angry neighbors. It'll get put out, or not. You push the hoe back into the dirt. The clouds roll in darker now. It might rain or hail. You don't have a jacket, just wool wet from yesterday. It's starting to itch again. As the sky darkens, your thoughts drift. You dream of a better life, one with fewer goats and more food. Maybe in the city, maybe with shoes, but that's not for you. That's for the lucky or the rich or the dead. Welcome to the middle of your day. The sun begins its slow descent, casting a bronze tint over the muddy fields. You're still out here digging and hoping the ground doesn't freeze solid before you finish. Your back is on fire, your hands are numb, and your stomach feels like it's writing poetry about hunger. Bad poetry. You pause for a moment, leaning on your hoe. There's a deep silence over the fields now, just the occasional crow overhead and the creak of wooden cartwheels in the distance. The air has that late autumn crispness, the kind that whispers, "Hey, winter's coming," and you're not ready. The village bell rings in the distance. No, not for you. That's for Vespers, the evening prayer. You think about slipping away to the chapel, not because you're feeling spiritual, but because it's the only building in the village with a roof that doesn't leak, and a priest who'll give you stale bread if you pretend to care about the sermon. But the overseer sees you lingering again and waves a knotted stick in your direction. Ah, motivation, medieval style. You keep working, eyes stinging with sweat. There's no concept of work-life balance in your world. The work is your life, and balance is for people with actual chairs. You squat to pull out weeds and stand up dizzy. You didn't eat enough. Again. Mainstream historians say the average medieval peasant diet was about 1,500 calories a day. Enough to survive, not enough to feel human. Fringe historians still argue whether the diet caused more deaths than the plague. You're starting to see their point. As you shuffle toward the water barrel, you spot the Lord's son galloping past on a fine horse. His boots are spotless. His tunic is embroidered. He doesn't look at you. You don't expect him to. Your background, set dressing, dirt that breathes. You sip from the barrel and it tastes like something died in it last week, but it's wet. Good enough. On your way back, you pass by the village gossip, an older woman with eyes like hawk talons. She mutters something about a neighboring village being cursed. Plague, she says, rats in the grain, dead pigs. You nod and keep walking. Not because you believe her, though you do, but because you don't want to get cursed by association. You return to the field to gather what you've hoed, a few turnips, some sprigs of greens. You tuck them into your sack. That's dinner. If you're lucky, your neighbor might trade you a boiled egg for a favor. Not today. He's still mad about the incident with your chicken. You didn't steal it, per se. You borrowed it briefly. Your hut is calling. But first, you have to walk past the manor. The Lord's house is a looming stone rectangle. It smells like wood smoke and salted meat. From the kitchen chimney, the scent of roast wafts into the village like a cruel joke. You imagine what it must be like to sit at that table, meat on every plate, wine in goblets, laughter, not coughing, no turnips. Historians still argue whether lords were truly indifferent to their peasants' suffering or if some genuinely tried to help. You don't know. You've never seen your lord smile, but he hasn't raised your rent this year, so maybe he's a decent tyrant. You arrive at your hut as the last light slips behind the hills. The door creaks, the thatch roof leaks, the walls are made of wattle and daub, basically sticks, mud, and desperation. Inside, it's warmish. A smoky fire smolders in the center. There's no chimney, the smoke just finds its way out. Eventually, your lungs are used to it. Your family's inside, a few kids, a spouse, maybe a grandparent snoring in the corner. You all sleep in the same room, on straw, under furs that haven't been washed since the last good harvest, which was a while ago. Dinner is cooked over the fire in a pot that's probably older than you. You toss in the greens, the turnips, and a handful of barley. The resulting soup tastes like boiled sadness, but it's warm and vaguely nutritious. A rat scurries across the beams. Nobody flinches. He's part of the family now. You've named him Bishop. As you sip your soup, your spouse mutters about the landlord raising taxes again. A penny here, a penny there. Doesn't sound like much, unless you don't have a penny. Then it sounds like a guillotine. You nod. You're too tired to argue, too hungry to care. The fire crackles. The kids huddle close. One starts coughing. That's probably fine. Probably. Historians often point out that peasant homes were hotbeds for disease. You don't need historians to tell you that. You live it. Every sneeze could be your last symphony. You lie back against the straw and stare at the roof beams. You think about tomorrow. It'll be the same. More digging, more aching, maybe more rats. You sigh. If time travel were real, you'd fast forward right past this part. But this is your time. This is your reality, and somehow you survive it. You wake before the sun again. Not because you want to, who in their right mind would, but because someone's rooster thinks 4 a.m. is an appropriate time for a personal concert. You roll over in the straw, your back still sore from yesterday, and try to ignore the fact that Bishop the Rat is using your foot as a pillow. There's no real alarm clock in your world. Time is measured by church bells, sunlight, and your body's built-in ache schedule. And right now, everything in your body is screaming, "Not again." You get up. The cold bites through your wool tunic, which is actually more whole than tunic at this point. You stretch, you crack, you shuffle to the door, unlatch it with stiff fingers, and step outside into a grey, misty dawn. The sky looks like wet linen. It probably smells like it too. First stop, the well. The village shares it, so you have to queue up like it's some sort of medieval nightclub, except no one's dancing, and everyone looks like they just lost a fight with a goat. You wait behind your neighbor, who smells strongly of fermented cabbage and regret. Your turn. The rope creaks as you lower the bucket. You hear a splash. That's a good sign. Last summer, the well dried up for a week, and people nearly went feral. You haul up the water and take a sip. It's cold, slightly metallic, and vaguely murky. But hey, hydration. Back at your hut, your spouse is already stoking the fire. Breakfast? Don't get excited. It's yesterday's barley porridge, cold and firm enough to double as a weapon. You slice off a piece with your knife and chew slowly, trying not to think about that time you saw a worm in it. Protein, right? Historians agree that peasants rarely had variety in their meals. Bread, porridge, ale. Rinse and repeat, except don't rinse, because soap is a luxury. Fringe historians still argue whether the medieval diet was surprisingly healthy or a slow-motion death sentence. You're leaning toward the second option. The kids are awake now, running around barefoot on the dirt floor. One of them's holding Bishop by the tail. You intervene gently. Bishop scurries off into his favorite wall hole. You make a mental note to leave out a scrap of porridge later. Fair is fair. Your spouse hands you a tiny leather pouch, your tithe for the church. 1/10 of your grain goes to God, 1/10 to the Lord, 1/10 to the rats, apparently. What's left is yours, assuming the weather behaves. Spoiler, it won't. You trudge to the village square where a few other peasants have gathered. The reeve is there, a peasant elected to boss around other peasants. He's holding a scroll and pretending he can read. He announces today's tasks in a voice that sounds like he gargles gravel. You're assigned ditch maintenance. Great. More mud, more cold, less dignity. The ditch in question runs along the edge of the manor. It's supposed to prevent flooding, but it mostly just floods itself. You spend the next few hours knee-deep in freezing muck, trying not to drop your spade or your sanity. The sky spits rain, because of course it does. Midway through the task, you find a broken horseshoe. Not exactly treasure, but maybe you can trade it for something, or melt it down into a really sad spoon. You're soaked, you're shivering, and you're convinced your left foot has lost all feeling. The only thing keeping you going is the faint aroma of something cooking at the manor. Roast duck, maybe, or roast peasant. You're too delirious to care. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants were truly resilient or simply too exhausted to complain. Either way, you're definitely both. By midday, you've been rained on, yelled at, and possibly cursed by a local shepherd who claims you were working on land that belongs to his sheep. You apologize. The sheep bleat menacingly. You move on. You take shelter under a tree to eat your midday meal, bread and onion. It's not bad if you pretend the onion is cheese and the bread is less bread. You chew slowly, watching the clouds crawl across the sky like tired ghosts. Someone nearby is singing a ballad about a knight and a dragon. It's completely off-key, but charming in a please stop kind of way. You hum along for a minute, then get back to digging. The afternoon drags. Your hands cramp, your knees ache, your mind wanders. You imagine being a noble, lounging by a fire, dictating letters, having other people dig your ditches. You imagine living in a world with pillows. Eventually, the reeve returns to inspect the ditch. He nods approvingly, which is as close to a compliment as you'll get this year. You're released. You walk home in the drizzle, counting each squish of your boots like it's a prayer. Inside the hut, it's almost cozy. The fire is lit. The kids are quiet. Your spouse is stirring something in the pot that smells like not bad. You peel off your wet tunic, hang it near the fire, and settle onto your straw bed with a groan. Dinner is the same as breakfast, and lunch, and every meal for the last forever. But it's warm, and it's yours. You drift into a light sleep as the wind whistles through the gaps in the wall, carrying with it the distant howl of a wolf and the even more terrifying sound of your neighbor trying to sing again. You wake again, not because you're well rested, but because the roof is leaking. A gentle rhythmic plop, plop, plop lands squarely on your forehead. Congratulations. The leak found your face. You roll to the side, mutter something that would be profanity if the 14th century had the vocabulary, and sit up with a groan. It's still dark out, but the village is already stirring. Today's special manor work, yay! Once a week you're invited, forced really, to work on the Lord's land. It's called corvée, and it's about as fun as it sounds. You trudge toward the manor fields, a hoe over your shoulder and a healthy dose of resentment in your chest. The manor looms like a smug reminder of everything you'll never own. High walls, stone towers, guards who do nothing all day except lean on their spears and smirk at people like you. The Lord's land stretches endlessly, neat rows of barley and wheat, carefully fenced gardens, and even an orchard. It's almost insultingly fertile. You're assigned to the eastern field. Guess what needs doing? Weeding. Lots of it. You kneel in the damp earth and begin pulling, every tug releasing the scent of crushed herbs and the silent judgment of 1,000 dead ancestors. The sun rises slowly behind the manor, spilling light over the fields. It's kind of pretty if you ignore the mud in your boots and the cramps in your spine. You pause for a moment, stretching your back and admiring a hawk circling overhead. Then, someone shouts for you to stop slacking. Historians still argue whether corvée labor was a crushing burden or just another expected duty in the rhythm of peasant life. Either way, you're currently experiencing the crushing version. By midday, your hands are raw. You've filled a basket with weeds and unearthed 2 beetles, a dead mouse and what you swear was a cursed doll head. You leave that one alone. You take your break near the edge of the orchard. One of the manor servants tosses you a bruised apple. It's the kind of gesture that would feel generous if it didn't still taste vaguely of worm. You eat it anyway. Fruit's fruit. You overhear a knight bragging about his last hunt, something about a boar the size of a cart, and how he stabbed it right in the heart. You roll your eyes. There's a good chance the boar was a piglet, and the stab was more of a poke. But you keep that thought to yourself. People have been whipped for less. You get back to work, this time digging furrows in the lower fields. The soil here is richer, softer, almost pleasant if it weren't for the blisters. Your hoe strikes something hard, probably a rock. You kneel to clear it away and discover a chunk of pottery, glazed with a strange swirling design. Maybe Roman? You pocket it, a future relic for some museum you'll never see. By afternoon, the field is a patchwork of fresh furrows, and your body is a patchwork of aches. You pause, leaning on your hoe, and look toward the manor again. A banner flutters from the tower, a red lion on a yellow field. You're not sure what it means, but you imagine it says, "We own you," in fancy embroidery. Rain threatens again, dark clouds gathering like gossiping neighbors. You pick up the pace, hoping to finish before it starts. You almost succeed. Almost. It starts as a drizzle and escalates to a full medieval downpour, the kind that soaks your skin, your bones, and your already tattered dignity. You don't even bother running. You just walk, slowly, letting the rain wash the dirt from your hands, the sweat from your face, and the faint hope from your soul. Back in the village, you wring out your tunic and hand over your portion of the manor crop to the reeve. He nods solemnly because no one smiles on Manor Day. Smiling is for people with dry socks and freedom. You return home soaked and sore. Your spouse hands you a bowl of something hot. You don't ask what it is. You just eat, letting the warmth spread through your chest like a small, edible miracle. You dry off near the fire, using a blanket that smells of mildew and goat. The kids are asleep, curled up like kittens. You smile despite yourself. You think back on the manor, its towers, its guards, its endless land. And for a moment you imagine what it would be like to live there. To sleep on feathers, wear wool without holes, eat meat more than twice a year, to be dry when it rains. But then you remember, nobles bathe like once a month. So maybe you're not missing everything. You fall asleep with your head near the fire, your feet pointed toward the leaky roof, and one hand still holding the chunk of ancient pottery. You wake the next morning to the sound of silence. No roosters, no yelling, just soft light filtering through the thatch and the steady breathing of your family. For one glorious moment, you think it might be a holiday. It's not. You've just overslept. You jolt upright, panic chasing away your sleepiness. The village is already alive, blacksmiths hammering, children hollering, someone arguing about goats. You stumble out of bed, throw on your damp tunic, still smells like swamp, and dash outside, nearly colliding with old Marta's laundry line. Today is market day. Once a week, merchants, peddlers, farmers, and other folk crowd into the village square to trade everything from vegetables to gossip. You're not exactly rich in goods, but your spouse has managed to stitch a few scraps into something vaguely resembling a tablecloth. and you've got a small sack of hazelnuts and some leftover turnips, a veritable treasure hoard. You find a spot near the well, lay out your wares on a piece of burlap, and try to look inviting, but not desperate. You've seen people fight over a piglet for less. Market day is a feast for the senses. Spices waft from the Syrian trader's cart. A jug of wine crashes to the ground. Children run barefoot through puddles. A juggler is doing a terrible job juggling what you're pretty sure are onions. A chicken escapes someone's basket and causes a minor stampede. You manage to trade your hazelnuts for a small wedge of sharp cheese, miracle, and 2 turnips for a comb made of bone. The comb will be a gift. The cheese, well, the cheese might not make it home. You eavesdrop on some monks arguing about theology. One insists purgatory is real. The other thinks it's a logical metaphor. You don't know what either means, but it sounds impressive. Historians still argue whether peasants had access to deeper religious debates or simply absorbed the basics. Judging by these monks' wine breath, today is not the day to ask. You spot a traveling bard setting up near the tavern. He's tuning a lute and humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a drinking song disguised as a hymn. A merchant is loudly claiming he saw a fish with hands in the northern lake. People laugh, but no one disagrees. Medieval science, everyone. You overhear something odd, 2 strangers murmuring about visions in the fire, a prophecy etched into stone, and a king who never died. You lean in, intrigued, but they stop talking when they notice you. His horse looks like it costs more than your entire village. He tosses a coin at a beggar, heads up of course, and rides off as if he cured leprosy. You mutter something under your breath. Your spouse kicks your shin. Some thoughts are best left unsaid. You take the long way home, through the woods. The air smells of moss and old rain. You find a few mushrooms, non-deadly, you hope, and a feather that looks worth keeping. Maybe you'll tie it into the kid's toy bow. As the sun begins to dip, you pass the chapel. A monk is lighting candles, and you pause to watch. There's something peaceful about the way the flames flicker in the dusky light, casting long shadows on the stone walls. You wonder if time feels slower here, or maybe just softer. You get home just in time for a small supper, porridge again, but with a hint of the cheese you smuggled in your pocket. Luxury. The kids chew happily, and your spouse raises an eyebrow at your trade skills. You bow dramatically. Everyone laughs. Even the baby tries, which mostly just sounds like a hiccup. As the fire dies down, you sit outside for a while. The stars are brighter than you remembered. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a ghostly river. You wonder how many of your ancestors have stared at the same stars from the same patch of earth. You fall asleep dreaming of feasts and warm beds and songs that make the pain in your knees vanish. You wake before dawn the next morning, not from sunlight, not from roosters, but from a sharp pain in your hip. Apparently, sleeping on straw stuffed with goat hair isn't as romantic as it sounds. You shift positions, which somehow makes it worse. Your spine cracks like old firewood. Welcome to medieval Mondays. Today isn't a market day. It isn't a holy feast or a seasonal fair. It's just a day. The kind of day most peasants live through 1,000 times before they die. And ironically, it's often these days, quiet, repetitive, seemingly unremarkable, that historians find the hardest to reconstruct. Historians still argue, you imagine them muttering in some distant archive, whether peasants felt time as we do, or if it just blurred into toil. You stretch, crack your neck, and head outside. Your main task today is maintaining the field near the edge of the woods. Not glamorous, not even moderately interesting, but essential. If you don't keep the weeds from strangling your already anemic barley crop, you'll be eating boiled bark by winter. You bring a rusty hoe and an even rustier attitude. The field is damp and quiet, with mist curling low over the ground. Birds chirp like they're mocking you. You begin the mind-numbing work of scraping weeds from between your struggling stalks. Every now and then, you find a worm. That's lunch. Okay, not really, but you're thinking about it. Hours pass. Your back screams, your hands blister. You start humming to yourself. Some old folk tune your grandmother used to sing about a cow who married a knight. Makes no sense, but it keeps you sane. Suddenly, a rustle in the trees. You freeze. A fox? A wolf? Bandits? You squint. It's just old Thomas. He's gathering firewood and muttering something about a vision he had in a dream. You wave. He nods. No words needed, just two people trying not to die before sundown. Later, a light drizzle starts. You ignore it. Rain means mud, and mud means the crops might actually grow this year. Plus, you're already halfway soaked from sweat, so what's a little more? By noon, your stomach starts complaining. You bite into a piece of hard bread you brought from home. It's stale enough to qualify as a weapon. You chew anyway. That's the peasant way. Around you, the forest buzzes. A woodpecker knocks like it's collecting rent. Somewhere in the distance, you hear church bells. Time for midday prayers. You whisper a lazy, "Thank you for not striking me with lightning," and keep weeding. God'll understand. In the afternoon, you check the rabbit snares you set earlier. One's been triggered. Miraculously, it's not empty. You actually caught something, an underfed rabbit with the personality of a turnip. You thank the gods, your ancestors, and possibly the rabbit itself. Dinner tonight just got slightly less grim. You carry the rabbit back wrapped in a sack, feeling like a hunter king. Your spouse gives you a look that says, "You didn't name it, did you?" You didn't. You were tempted. After a quick and slightly messy butchering, the rabbit's on the spit. The kids are dancing around the fire like it's Saturnalia. They've never tasted rabbit. This is luxury on par with a noble's feast. While the meat cooks, your spouse brings out a small tin of herbs saved from last year's harvest. You sprinkle some on the meat. Suddenly, your rabbit smells like destiny. The fire crackles. Everyone sits close. You eat slowly, savoring each bite like it's the last you'll ever have. And hey, it might be. You tell a story to the kids while they chew, about a knight who challenged a dragon to a chess match. The dragon won, but gave the knight his life for effort. Your youngest laughs like it's the funniest thing ever heard. Later that night, while your spouse braids dried lavender into little bundles, you sit outside and look up. The stars are back, and you can't help but think about the rhythm of it all. The work, the hunger, the laughter, the skies. It's not glamorous, it's not noble, but it's life. And right now, you're surviving it. The next morning begins with a shrill scream. Not from you, thankfully, but from somewhere down the lane. Instinctively, you rush outside, heart pounding, clutching a dull farming knife like it's Excalibur. It's not an attack, it's childbirth. Agnes, the baker's wife, has gone into labor in the communal birthing room. It's her 5th child. 3 have survived. Your spouse is already hurrying over with a swaddling cloth and a pot of warm water. You follow behind, curiosity piqued, partly out of concern, partly because, let's be honest, there's no such thing as privacy in a medieval village. The air inside the thatched hut is thick, steam, sweat, and the unmistakable scent of old herbs and human panic. The village midwife, a stooped woman with iron-grey hair and the demeanor of a Roman general, barks orders while pacing. You watch from the doorway, trying not to look too useless. Childbirth in the Middle Ages is a battlefield. There's no anesthesia, no clean tools, no trained physicians, just knowledge passed down by experience and desperate prayer. Historians still argue, you recall someone once saying, whether the mortality rates were worse due to infection or sheer nutritional deficiencies. Agnes screams again. The midwife shouts back. Everyone's sweating now, including you. Eventually, after what feels like hours, but is probably less than one, the baby arrives, red and wailing, slippery as a caught fish. It's a girl, alive. Agnes is pale but breathing. That makes today a miracle. You walk home quiet. You think about how easily life and death mingle here, how close everything is, how a good day means nobody died and something edible landed on your plate. The sun's already high and your chores aren't going to do themselves, so you head to the communal well. At the well, you find two boys arguing about who gets to draw water next. You settle it with a game of pick the longer straw, a literal game using bits of dried grass. Peasants are nothing if not resourceful. You draw two buckets, one for your home, one for old Thomas, who seems to be losing the war with arthritis. He tries to pay you with a joke about monks and leeks. You accept it gratefully. Back home, your spouse is boiling linens. Your kids are poking sticks at a pile of beetles. You join them for a moment. The bugs scatter like peasants avoiding taxes. The rest of the day is spent in domestic toil. You mend a shoe using a bent nail. You fix the chicken pen, which somehow broke again despite the fact that you haven't had chickens in months. Hope springs eternal. Dinner is onion soup. The rabbit from yesterday is but a delicious memory. You eat slowly, grateful for warmth. Later, just as twilight paints the sky in streaks of purple and ochre, a rider approaches the village. That's unusual. Horses aren't common here, nor are messengers. The rider wears a dusty cloak and bears a scroll sealed with wax. You and several others gather as he dismounts. He announces something from the scroll, new taxes from the local lord, a higher grain tithe, something about a festival in 3 weeks. No one cheers. You try not to think about how little grain you have left. You'll make it work, or you won't. Before the rider leaves, he tells a story about a nearby village where a woman claims to have seen an angel by the river. The midwife scoffs. But you're not so sure. Angels, demons, ghosts. It all seems equally plausible when you've lived through childbirth, soup and surprise taxes in a single day. That night the stars are hidden by clouds. The wind rustles the trees like whispers from another world. You lay in bed, your body aching from mundane tasks, your mind buzzing with divine possibilities. What if the angel was real? What if tomorrow brings a plague? What if the grain rots? You fall asleep mid-thought, dreams drifting somewhere between celestial visitors and onion soup. Your dreams are strange. Flickers of gold-winged angels arguing with tax collectors, a talking chicken quoting the Bible, and a baby that grows into a full-grown monk within seconds. You awaken with a dry mouth and the distinct sense that your mind is not quite your own. It's nearly dawn, though the sun hasn't cracked the horizon yet. You rise and step outside into the soft mist curling low over the fields. The entire village is hushed, save for the faint rustle of wind through barley stalks and the groaning creak of a swinging tavern sign. Morning in the Middle Ages is always a negotiation between warmth and cold, hunger and survival, silence and obligation. Today is Sabbath, which means, at last, no laboring in the fields, sort of. Instead, You scrub your face with rainwater, put on your less dirtied tunic, which still smells faintly of turnips, and head toward the chapel with the rest of your family. Church isn't tea optional. It is the one event that binds the village more tightly than taxes or gossip. You squeeze into the small, smoky building, where incense competes with the body odor of 50 villagers. The priest begins Mass in Latin. You don't understand a word, but you know the rhythm. Rise, kneel, murmur, cross, repeat. The priest drones on about humility, divine order, and the importance of paying tithes, his voice echoing off the stone walls like bees trapped in a jug. Behind him is a faded painting of the Last Judgment, souls being sorted like bad apples. The eyes of the devils seem to follow you. That's normal. Everyone agrees on that, even if no one says it aloud. Suddenly a boy sneezes, violently. Everyone flinches. You glance around, no blood, no boils, probably just a cold. Still, you edge a step away. You remember what happened the last time someone sneezed this hard. The village lost 4 elders and 1 cow that had nothing to do with anything. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers truly understood how disease spread, you think, or if they just blamed it all on sin, witches, or a bad omen from a howling dog. After Mass, you gather outside under a gnarled oak tree. Today's sermon has everyone tense. There's talk of illness in the neighboring village, 2 dead, 1 bleeding from the gums. You're not sure if that's an exaggeration or just really vivid gossip. The priest suggests prayer and a little fasting. Old Thomas suggests boiling everything in vinegar. The baker's wife says she's already begun making onion amulets for her children. You decide to head to the herbalist. The herbalist's hut is a chaotic wonderland. Bundles of dried plants hang from every rafter. The air smells like basil, death, and wet dog. The herbalist, Magda, is hunched and cackling as usual. She peers at you with one eye, the other is permanently squinted, and hands you a sachet of rosemary, marigold, and something she just calls fox's breath. You don't ask questions. You hand over 2 eggs in payment. On the way back, you pass the tavern. Inside, men are gambling with beans, sipping weak ale, and complaining about the priest's Latin pronunciation. You sit for a while, not to drink, you can't afford it, but to listen. A traveler is recounting a story from the coast. He claims a man built a wooden horse big enough to house 20 thieves. You think he may have misunderstood a Greek myth, but you don't correct him. Myths, facts, dreams, it all blends together when you've been raised on fairy tales and church sermons. Later, you return home. The rest of the day is quiet. Your spouse is patching clothes. Your eldest is helping twist rope from old hemp. The chickens are still missing. You accept this. You light a tallow candle and read aloud from a single page of Psalms. It's the only page your household owns. You've memorized it entirely, of course, but the act of reading, even pretending, is comforting. The flicker of the flame dances across the page, like the memory of a better life. As night falls, you tuck into a bowl of porridge and consider what it means to survive. There are no victories, only small reprieves. A warm bed, a safe hearth, 1 day without fever. That's enough. Tomorrow, you might wake to find the village coughing in unison. Or you might wake to laughter, a wedding, a dance, a moment of joy. You close your eyes, unsure of what dreams will come, but tonight at least you sleep in peace. You awake to a pounding at the door. It's not dawn yet, but your cousin Gervais is outside, breathless, eyes wide like he's seen a dragon, or worse, the tax collector. "Wake up!" he hisses. "They found someone in the woods." You rub the sleep from your eyes and pull your tunic over your head, still damp from yesterday's wash. No time for bread or even a quick prayer. You slip into your wooden clogs and follow Gervais into the early morning fog. The woods are usually off limits. That's where bandits roam and wolves and maybe spirits. But curiosity is stronger than fear when you live on stale barley soup and long silences. Near the edge of the forest, half the village has gathered. There's someone sitting against a tree stump, barefoot, strange robes, blood on their hands, a stranger, a foreigner, or, as half the villagers are whispering, a prophet. The other half says witch. Your village doesn't get many visitors. The priest is already there, clutching a cross and muttering under his breath. The herbalist Magda is sniffing the air like a hunting dog. The blacksmith says he saw a comet last week. That always means something. Historians still argue whether medieval villages saw strangers as divine messengers or harbingers of doom, you think. As you inch closer, the stranger opens their mouth. They speak in Latin or maybe a dialect none of you know. The priest claims to understand. He says the stranger was sent by God. He says the world is ending. The villagers gasp. You sigh. Every time someone new shows up, it's either the end of days or a miracle. Sometimes both. Last year, a bearded man came through claiming he could turn sheep into wine. He was tarred and chased out by nightfall. The stranger is taken to the chapel. The priest locks the doors. Later that morning, you return to the rhythm of village life, but the sense of unease lingers. You're sent to the nearby stream to help wash linens. It's quiet there. The water is cold and fast, like a strip of silver writhing through the land. You wash in silence, listening to the breeze in the reeds. Then someone beside you whispers, "They say the stranger knew your name." You drop the tunic. The rest of the day blurs. You help with laundry, return home, eat a bowl of onion stew, and try not to think about the words you never heard. But night brings no peace. You lie awake, staring at the thatched roof. Somewhere beyond the village, owls hoot and frogs croak. It sounds like a warning. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. You sit up. Someone's outside. A shadow passes by the window. You freeze, heart thudding in your chest like a drum played by an angry ghost. The door creaks and then nothing. Just silence. You stay awake until the candle burns low. Maybe it was a fox. Maybe it was a dream. Or maybe, just maybe, your name really was known. Sleep eventually finds you, but your dreams are different this time. You're walking through a cathedral of trees, each one etched with your life story. At the end of the path is a man in strange robes, smiling. He speaks your name, and the trees bloom with fire. You wake before dawn, cold, alert, and more alive than you've felt all week. You rise with the crows, heart still pounding from the dream. Or was it a memory now? Either way, you feel watched by something older than time, perhaps smarter than anyone in your village, certainly smarter than you. You shake it off with the first mouthful of porridge. Today is a holy day, or at least that's what the priest claims. Honestly, there's a holy day every other week. But this one feels different. Everyone is whispering about the stranger in the chapel. Some say he vanished overnight. Others say he turned to ash. A few are convinced he turned into a raven and flew away. You join the line heading toward the small stone church, just big enough to feel cramped, but not quite enough to be impressive. Inside, the air smells of wax and stale incense. The stranger is there, sitting in the front row like he belongs. No chains, no guards, just there. No one makes eye contact. You try to sit as far back as possible, which in this place means 3 pews away. The priest begins the sermon. But instead of the usual warnings about temptation, this one is about time, about how time bends, warps, how the Lord alone commands it. He points to the stranger. This man is proof. You're not sure what that proof is exactly. The man hasn't spoken a word since the woods, but he sits so still, too still, like he knows something none of us do, like he's waiting. The Mass ends without communion. That's odd. Outside, the village is unusually quiet. The baker forgot to start the ovens. The kids aren't playing with sticks. Even the dogs aren't barking. Time, it seems, has paused. Magda the herbalist pulls you aside. She's got leaves in her hair and a fire in her eye. "He came through the old path," she whispers. "The one near the burial mounds." You blink. That trail's been sealed for a generation. Too many disappearances, too much talk of lights in the woods and time slipping like water through fingers. Magda says he's not the first. You're not sure you believe her, but part of you, deep animal instinct part, wants to go see for yourself. And so, like a complete fool, you wait until dusk, grab your cloak, and follow the overgrown path toward the mounds. The trail winds like a drunken snake through the trees. Brambles tug at your cloak. The air gets thick, sweet, almost syrupy. The kind of smell that shouldn't belong to any forest. You pass a stone carved with something you can't read. It glows faintly. And then you find it. A ring of standing stones. Ancient, covered in lichen and etched with strange symbols that move when you are not looking directly at them. You step into the ring and the wind stops completely. The world goes silent. Your skin prickles. Then the stranger appears, stepping from the shadows like he never left the chapel. He points at you, not threatening, more like offering. You can feel it. Time. Not like a clock ticking or an hourglass turning. Time as a living thing, breathing, coiling around your ankles like a cat, waiting for permission. The stranger extends his hand. Your legs freeze, but your thoughts race. Historians still argue whether medieval folk had any concept of timelines, or if they believed everything was part of a repeating divine plan. Right now, you're pretty sure this isn't part of the plan. You say nothing, just stare. And the moment passes. The stranger lowers his hand, gives you the saddest smile you've ever seen, and fades into the trees. The wind returns. The birds sing again. You collapse. When you finally stumble back to the village, hours later, no one believes you were gone. To them, it's barely been 10 minutes. Your mother says you have soup waiting. You nod. But inside, you know something's changed. You're not sure what or when. You wake up the next day in your straw bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. A sliver of light sneaks through the cracks in the shutter, catching the motes of dust swirling in the air. Your back aches and your head feels heavy, like your thoughts are wrapped in wool. You stretch, expecting to hear your mother calling you for chores, but the house is quiet. Unusually quiet. You step outside and find the village covered in a fine mist, the kind that clings low to the ground and hides familiar paths. Everything looks the same, but not quite. The trees feel taller. The color of the sky leans violet. The chickens cluck in odd rhythms. It's like someone repainted your world in near-identical shades, but forgot a few details. Your neighbor Gerwin greets you, but calls you Jonas. That's not your name. You smile awkwardly, heart thudding. Morning. Gerwin nods like nothing's wrong, and continues chopping wood, humming a tune you've never heard but feels oddly nostalgic. You check your hands. They look older. Your nails are trimmed, but you never trim your nails. You lift your tunic to find a leather belt pouch you don't remember owning. Inside, a silver coin with a king's face you've never seen. Oh, good. You're either dreaming or you've accidentally skipped centuries. You walk to the village center, expecting to see the chapel, the well, the baker's stall, and they're all there, but rearranged. The chapel has a tall steeple now. The well has stonework carved with beasts. The baker's stall is brimming with strange, foreign-looking bread that smells of honey and spice. No one seems alarmed. You try asking a few villagers what year it is. Most chuckle and slap your shoulder like you're making a joke. One woman gives you a look, whispers something about moon sickness, and offers you a clove of garlic. You stumble into the chapel. Inside, it's different, bigger, brighter. The stained glass windows shimmer with scenes you don't recognize. One shows the stranger from the forest, but dressed like a saint, glowing golden, holding what looks like a mechanical sundial. You're frozen. Have you gone forward in time? The priest enters. Not your priest. This man is younger, cleaner, more severe. He's holding a book bound in green leather. You ask him who the man in the glass is. That's Saint Eldrick, he replies, patron of time and roads. Oh no, you try to laugh, you even try to play along. What's his story? The priest shrugs. He came from the forest one day, showed the village how to mark the days properly, how to plant by stars. Then he vanished. Some say he was from the future. Some say he was time itself. You nod slowly, trying not to hyperventilate. The stranger didn't just vanish. He became a legend, a saint, maybe even a god. You back away and exit the chapel, feeling like your body's vibrating. You head back to your house, but it's not there. In its place is a blacksmith's shop. A young girl is sweeping the stoop. She looks up and waves. "Looking for the weaver's house?" she asks. You blink. "Yes." She points behind the chapel. When you get there, it's your home. Same crooked door, same herb bundles hanging from the rafters. But when you enter, your mother doesn't look up. She's stitching a tunic and muttering to herself, and when she does look up, her eyes widen. "You're back," she whispers. "It worked." "What worked?" you ask, barely able to breathe. "The blessing," she says. "He said if I gave you the amulet, time would correct itself." You reach into your tunic. There's an amulet you've never seen hanging around your neck, a small disc engraved with the same symbols from the standing stones. Your hands shake. You want answers, but all you get are riddles. So you sit, you eat. You let the warmth of soup and familiar sounds steady you. That night you dream again, only this time you're in a field of stars. The stranger stands beside you, staring out into the void. "I told you," he says, "time is not a river, it's a garden. You just took a different path." "Can I go back?" you ask. He smiles. You never left. You wake up in your bed to the sound of chickens and the smell of baking bread. Everything feels right. But your hands still tremble. And somewhere deep in your chest, you know this isn't over. The days that follow feel like a strange blend of the familiar and the uncanny. You wake up each morning, collect eggs, fetch water, sweep the floor, just as you always did. Yet there's an edge to everything now, like the world has been nudged ever so slightly off-center. You notice tiny details no one else seems to clock, constellations that have shifted slightly in the night sky, villagers calling things by names that feel new, The old stone by the well, now etched with carvings that weren't there before. You tried to push it all aside. After all, chores don't do themselves. Today, your task is to help repair part of the village palisade. A wall of sharpened logs meant to keep out wolves or, occasionally, less friendly humans. You drag your feet the whole way there, because hammering posts isn't exactly thrilling. But when you arrive, the others wave you over like you've been expected. "Jonas," says the overseer, "grab a mallet. We'll need that strength of yours." There it is again, Jonas. You've given up correcting people. You work alongside them, hammering in rhythm, your arms sore and skin dusted with sawdust. The air is thick with heat and the scent of pine. It should be boring, but it isn't. You're watching history unfold, not as a tourist, but as a participant. Nearby, two villagers argue quietly about the planting calendar. One claims the moons have shifted, the other insists that the new ways brought better harvests. You strain to hear, but they hush as you draw near. Still, the words lodge in your mind. You suspect these new ways have something to do with you. Later that day, you visit the forest again. You're drawn to it like a moth to fire. The path is the same, but the standing stones look different, more worn, their carvings deeper, as if the passage of time has aged them centuries overnight. You sit before them and try to piece it all together. That stranger, the dreams, the chapel windows, the changed sky. You're not a scholar, not a priest. You're just a peasant with blisters on your hands and too many questions. Still, you remember what he said, time is not a river, it's a garden. So you begin treating it like one. You experiment. One night, you bury a carved stone under your bed. Another, you whisper different wishes to the stars. You count days between dreams. You sleep facing different directions. And slowly, a pattern emerges, not clear, but rhythmic. Like music you can almost hum. Historians still argue whether peasants had any meaningful understanding of time beyond seasons and prayer bells. But here you are, living proof that time can bend, and you don't even know how to read. One day you wake before dawn and feel it, a pull, a knowing. You grab your amulet and walk to the stones. There, bathed in moonlight, stands the stranger. Only this time, he bows to you. "I had to be sure," he says, "that you could feel it." You look at him. Feel what? The shift. You've been planting seeds, haven't you? You nod, suddenly cold. You're no longer just traveling through time, he continues. Time is starting to travel through you. Your mouth is dry. What does that mean? He gestures to the village below. They'll remember different harvests, different kings. Some will swear things were always this way. Others will get headaches and bad dreams. You'll anchor them. You're the constant now. You want to laugh or cry or scream, but instead, you just sit. "You said I never left," you say softly. "But I'm not where I started, am I?" He smiles. "You're further along the garden path. That's all." The night deepens. He fades. You stay. The stars swirl overhead, and for the first time, you don't feel scared. You feel rooted. You walk home with new weight in your steps, but not the bad kind. The kind that says, "I belong here now." The world may have changed, or you did. Or maybe it was always like this, and you finally noticed. You awaken the next morning to silence. Not the usual quiet of dawn, but a stillness that hums with expectation. Even the birds seem to hold their breath. The sky is veiled in thick mist, and your cottage feels unusually cold. You pull the wool cloak tighter around your shoulders and step outside, your breath fogging in the air. Something has shifted again. You can feel it in your bones. The village is slower today. People whisper more than they speak. Children clutch their mothers' skirts. The baker's fire burns low, and even the dogs seem too wary to bark. You pass the chapel and notice something odd. The stained glass windows now shimmer with images you've never seen before. Figures holding hourglasses, suns with spiral rays, and eyes surrounded by constellations. You pause. One of the figures looks familiar. It's you. Later, at the edge of the village, you join a gathering by the standing stones. A traveler has arrived, an old woman in silver-dyed robes, her face hidden beneath a veil. She carries a staff wrapped in copper wires and feathers. She says she is a weaver of the in-between, and that the village stands at a crossroad between timelines. People murmur. Some scoff. Others stare at her like she's a goddess. You don't know whether to laugh or kneel. She scans the crowd slowly and without hesitation walks toward you. "You've changed the soil," she says, her voice like wind over sand. "Now the roots grow in new directions." You blink. "I didn't mean to," she chuckles. "No one ever does, but you felt the tug." You answered. That night, she stays in your home. You share stale bread and soup, and she traces maps in the ashes of the hearth, maps of time, not land, loops, knots, spirals. She explains things in ways that make your head ache and your heart race. You learn that time doesn't move forward. It pulses, expands, contracts. You learn that some moments repeat until we learn from them, and others vanish if ignored. You learn that peasants can be prophets, and that even forgotten villages can become the axis around which time spins. Historians still debate whether medieval folk believed in multiple timelines. Some claim they did, hidden within allegories and visions. Others dismiss it as superstition. But sitting across from this woman, warmed by your flickering hearth, it doesn't feel like superstition at all. You ask her the one question that haunted you. Will I ever go back? She leans forward, her eyes catching the firelight. You never left, she says again. You just woke up. You stare into the flames. They're different tonight. Colors you can't name flicker and swirl. You feel their heat deep in your chest. Before bed, you open the amulet again. Inside is a seed. You don't remember placing it there. You don't remember ever opening it before. You hold it to the firelight and smile. That night your dreams are clearer. No more fragments, no more riddles. You walk through gardens that stretch across lifetimes. You pass pyramids and castles and cities not yet built. You speak with children who haven't been born and elders who never died. And at the center of it all, you walking steadily forward, eyes wide open, feet bare against the soil of 1,000 years. You awaken before sunrise. The woman is gone. In her place, a folded note and a sprig of lavender. The note reads, "You held time gently, and it bloomed. Plant the seed. Watch what grows." The sky outside is still a pale shade of early blue when you step out, seed in hand. Dew clings to your bare feet, and the village lies wrapped in a sleepy hush. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows, softly, as if not to disturb what the night has left behind. You walk to the edge of the field, where the soil feels warmer than it should. The place where the old woman stood now shimmers with faint, unfamiliar patterns in the earth, circles, spirals, intersecting lines that echo the maps she drew in the ashes. You kneel and begin to dig. The seed is small, barely more than a speck between your fingers, but it pulses with a faint warmth. You place it gently into the earth, cover it with soil, and press your palm against the ground. You don't expect anything to happen, and yet you feel something shift, not in the earth, but in the air. a current like a sigh across centuries. You rise and return to the village. Today, things feel different. The miller smiles without his usual scowl. The children play by the river with a new kind of laughter. The baker gifts you a roll without charge, and you swear you hear a melody riding the wind, one you've never heard before, but recognize somehow. You spend the day doing what peasants do, hauling, sewing, scraping, but now it feels intentional. There's weight to each action, rhythm in each step. Your hands no longer feel like they're surviving. They feel like they're shaping something. As dusk falls, you sit by your hearth and stare at the empty space where the old woman sat. The fire crackles low, and you think, maybe you were meant to be here all along. Maybe this one day was always the point. Historians still argue whether individual peasants had agency, or if they were merely swept along by the tides of kings and wars. But you've lived it now. You know the truth. You didn't just survive this day. You changed it. And perhaps in some timeline, that was enough to shift everything. In your dreams that night, you are not a peasant. You are not a time traveler. You are something in between, a thread in the great weave of history, and the tapestry, at long last, begins to show your shape. You're still here. The village has faded into mist. The fire has burned down to soft embers, and your body is heavy in the most comforting way. You've traveled across time tonight, through mud and rain, fear and wonder, through a single day that felt like a lifetime. But now, all that matters is rest. Let your breath slow. In through the nose, hold. Out through the mouth, let your shoulders loosen. Let your hands soften. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a gentle stream. That field where you planted the seed, it's still there. And even if you never walk those paths again, something you did will continue to grow. The roots are deep now, safe, timeless. You did well tonight. Whatever your day held in the real world, whatever stress or noise, just know you've earned this moment of quiet. You've stepped outside the boundaries of time for a while, and now you're gently floating back. Let the last flickers of candlelight fade. Let your breathing find its rhythm. Let go of everything you're holding and just be. You are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. Now sleep, traveler. Sleep well.